Hey, it's Shelby from Turn Sounds. Google how to adjust your side mirrors properly. Thank me later. Hi, I'm Shelby. I'm a clinical exercise physiologist.
And I'm Abbey, a clinical nutritionist. And this is the Move Your Mind podcast,
where we talk all things diet, exercise and well-being and back it up with evidence
from our Bachelor of Health Science degrees. So welcome and let's get into it. All right, so for today's episode, I'm gonna chat about digestion and absorption.
Beautiful.
And how to improve them.
Great.
Because I feel like that's something that everyone is wanting to know. How do I get better digestion, or help me digest my food, or gut health and things like that? And it's a very feasible thought because digestion and absorption are the primary functions of your digestive system. And I think absorption of nutrients is arguably the most important thing that you can optimize.
I could see that, yeah.
Because if you feed yourself with good food, it's only going to have the benefits that you want if you're able to absorb the nutrients that it has.
Yes,
Yeah?
exactly. If you're eating and it's not going in anywhere, then what's the point?
Exactly. So I thought I'd just run through the digestive system, all the different aspects of it, both mechanical and chemical digestion.
Cool.
Are they familiar terms from little nutrition units that you've done?
Yes.
So for anyone that doesn't know, mechanical digestion is any form of digestion. Shelby's across the table from me doing a chewing motion. It's any form of digestion that involves mechanical breakdown. So no chemicals, it's like chewing, it's muscular contractions, it's churning.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got chemical digestion, which of course involves chemicals. So that can be enzymes primarily, stomach acid,
Saliva,
mm-hmm. Yes, which contains salivary enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all your body's chemicals which act to break down your bigger food components into the smaller food components for absorption.
Cool.
Another thing to start off with, I think, is what's actually absorbed. Because you've got your macronutrients,
yes,
which are carbohydrates, your fats, your protein.
Yes.
Sound like a broken record.
This is the only way I remember stuff because I repeat it. So
over
keep
and
it
over
up.
again. And through digestive processes, we get our carbohydrates down to simple sugars, so monosaccharides, which is your glucose, your fructose, or your galactose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get your large protein molecules down into amino acids.
Of course, yeah.
And then you get your fat-containing foods that breaks down to fatty acids and glycerol. So only when they are the single units of their initial form can they be absorbed.
Yeah, and does absorb just mean utilised in the body?
So that's a very good question. So absorption primarily occurs, it occurs, not primarily because it's the only place that it occurs, in your small intestine.
Yeah.
So you've got little divots in the lining, in your gut lining, that have certain areas called villi with a
little hairs.
Yes,
kind of
little
thing, yeah.
projections, tiny little projections.
Yeah.
And the reason that they have, what could you picture? You know what I picture?
Yeah.
I picture Bart Simpson's hair.
Oh.
You know, with all the spikes?
Yeah.
So the idea is they all sit on your gut lining.
Nice.
And the more, increase, decrease, thinking like a mountain up and down, the more deviations you have, the greater the surface area of your gut lining. Mm-hmm. So that's a really cool adaptation that we've developed as humans to increase our ability to absorb nutrients.
Awesome.
So the more deviations you have, the more time and space that the food particles have to go past your gut lining, and the more chance they have to go from your gut lining through your villi into the large amount of blood vessels that are on the other side of the villi.
Yep.
And then from your blood vessels, they can travel, of course, throughout your body system and be delivered to your target organs and tissues.
Cool. So we want to break down the big things into small things that get passed into the bloodstream that then get passed around the body.
And do their job.
Cool.
And a very common thing that I see with clients, both in my uni studies and now clinical experience, is malabsorption and maldigestion.
Yes.
So you get people that for some reason aren't breaking down their macronutrients, and then you place greater amounts of pressure on that absorption processes because you've got big particles that are trying to push through the villi that aren't meant to be pushed through.
Yeah.
And then your body's like, what is going on? It can initiate an inflammatory response, even autoimmune responses. Because your body can actually see those large food particles as threats or even pathogens. Yeah, so they can attack the area like they would a bacterial or a viral particle.
Yeah, and you have the same response.
Yeah. And that can then create damage to the villi and the gut lining, which then creates little gaps in your gut lining.
And a leaky gut.
The kind of layman's term, I guess, we call it intestinal hyperpermeability.
Yeah.
So hyper means too much.
Yeah.
And permeability is how quick something goes through a barrier.
Yeah.
So it's too much.
Too much going through.
Literally. If you break down scary words like that, it makes it a lot easier.
Easy. Yeah.
And then, the hyperpermeability is what can drive, systemic inflammation, autoimmune conditions, generalized ill health. It's a big kind of undiagnosed issue in a lot of people.
Yeah.
And only when, say, a clinical nutritionist or a naturopath goes in and tries to heal the gut lining as such, increase the integrity of the gut lining, are people able to absorb their food, get the nutrients, and then also reduce all those negative inflammatory immune responses.
Exactly.
We went off topic, didn't we?
Well, I was going to ask, kind of with that, the first question comes to mind is, why aren't the particles being broken down into their simpler forms? How is that not happening?
There is so many reasons.
Yeah.
I think the best way to answer that is starting with the mouth, working through all of the different parts of your digestive system and what can go wrong.
Cool, yeah.
And then I guess what we can do to optimize their function. So digestion starts in your mouth, back to you doing the little chewing motion. And in the mouth is both chemical and mechanical digestion.
Yep.
So, of course, mechanical is chewing. And your chemical is your saliva.
Yes.
So your saliva has salivary enzymes which break down primarily carbohydrates.
Okay.
So the more you chew, the better you break down your food. Think of it as like pre-digestion or pre-absorption.
Yeah.
So the more you can mush up your food, the smaller the particles and the easier it is for the other processes to do their job.
Nice. So when your parents always told you to chew your food, they were doing a good thing for you.
Yeah. And that's one of the kind of more naturopathic lifestyle recommendations that I would make is make sure you chew your food 20 times a mouthful.
Crazy.
It sounds like a lot, and I must admit, I probably don't do that.
My jaw aches just thinking about it.
But it is, maybe 20 is a lot, but just try to increase it. Be
more.
mindful.
Yeah.
Don't just gobble it down and not think about food.
Yeah.
And not think about, eliminate distractions around eating. That's really important so you can be mindful. Because not only does chewing break down your food, it also sends signals to the next part of your digestive process, which is through your esophagus to your stomach.
Yeah.
And chewing helps initiate the release of stomach acid, which is like the next part of digestion.
So crazy how it all works together. So cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you've got the chewing, you've got the salivary enzymes, which starts to break down carbohydrates because it's primarily salivary amylase.
Yes.
And anything
I've heard
with
of that.
amylase is carbohydrate digesting enzyme.
Yeah.
And just for future reference, protease is a protein and lipase is fat.
Oh,
because
amazing. These are in my brain.
lipids.
Yeah, cool.
That's the good old foundations
And
of
they
nutrition.
emulsify.
They do. They break down like a soap.
Oh, amazing.
So once we get to the stomach, then you've got, once again, mechanical digestion. Your stomach actually have heaps of muscles. They do lots of contractions. They go upwards, downwards, circular motions to kind of think about vigorously stirring cake batter. That's kind of what's happening in your stomach.
Fold it in and turn it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, to break it down, to like separate particles. And then you've got stomach acid, which is a vital part of digestion. We have certain little cells that are in our stomach lining that secrete a enzyme called pepsinogen.
Okay.
So that's a protease. It's a type of protease. It breaks down protein.
Yep.
and pepsinogen is activated in an acidic environment.
Okay. Yeah.
And it forms pepsin, which then helps break down your protein.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that you can break down the protein mechanically in your mouth, but no chemical digestion occurs for protein in your mouth.
Okay.
So any malabsorption issues with protein, it originates from an issue with stomach acid secretion or activation. And that can be from so many things.
Well, like you said before, just even chewing, did you say, can activate the secretion. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lack of chewing can inhibit proper protein breakdown.
Yeah.
And then you've got things like B vitamin and zinc deficiencies.
Yeah.
They actually work to they work with your gastric cells to kind of form and initiate secretion of gastric acid.
Yeah.
So zinc and vitamin B, I'd say the main bang for your buck to get both of those nutrients in would be whole grains. Super high.
Gee, they're so good for you.
Like it always comes back to the stuff that's good for you. It just makes so much sense. So all your brown stuff with the whole wheat germ, so brown bread, brown pasta, rye, oats, barley, all of that stuff.
Nice.
Quinoa for people that are gluten free, that's whole grain. So yeah. And then what else is there for stomach acid? Let me rack my brain. Even things like so some people can be deficient in stomach acid.
Yeah.
And that's called hypochlorhydria.
Okay.
And you can have an excess of stomach acid.
Mm-hmm.
And both can cause reflux.
Okay.
Because I remember at the beginning of my studies, I always used to think, well, if you have reflux, you have too much acid. Not necessarily.
Of course not.
So if you have reflux, I think that's a pretty big sign of some issues with stomach acid.
Yep.
Which can then correlate to issues with protein breakdown and absorption.
Yeah.
So low stomach acid can cause reflux because you've got the bigger particles that aren't broken down because there's not enough acid.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go through into your small intestine and they're too big for your small intestine. So the bacteria in your small intestine try to break them down and they produce gas.
Yes.
And then the gas creates pressure, which pushes the food in your stomach upwards.
Okay.
And the stomach acid kind of gets trapped on top and can push up through your esophagus into your esophagus.
Okay. Because what is reflux? Like a burning feeling in your
Reflux
chest?
is acid-like regurgitation.
Yeah. What does it feel like?
It's, a burning sensation, kind of like heartburn. That's what people usually...
Yeah, I don't really know if I've...
Have you never had...
I don't know. I don't think
Or
so.
people with reflux tend to do the hiccup burps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And people with reflux can even get sore throats all the time if the acid's going all the way up. You can get dental decay if the acid goes as far into your oral cavity.
Yeah, I've heard that if you vomit all the time.
Yes.
Similar kind of thing, I guess.
Completely, because the acid is going where it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Because your stomach
Strong.
lining, is very strong, and it's got mucus layers around it, which help stop its breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an adequate mucus layer, then you end up getting damage to your stomach lining, which is not good either.
But if you have reflux, you know you have reflux. Cool.
I definitely,
Cool.
It's something that you'd know if you have it. And then too much acid can then, obviously it makes more sense. If you've got too much volume, it's going to escape somewhere. It goes up your esophagus.
Because everything else is hidden with... I've lost the word.
Valves.
Valves, thank you.
Yeah,
I was the
sphincters.
word has gone. Yeah, those two. I was there are two words. Everything else is hidden, so it's a one-way backup road.
Exactly. So if you experience reflux, there are things that you can do, most definitely, through nutrition and lifestyle strategies to kind of regulate or balance your stomach acid to then optimize your protein digestion. So there are certain foods that actually relax your sphincter to your esophagus and then cause the acid to regurgitate and not stay where it should be, kind of in that churning environment, breaking down your proteins.
Okay.
So foods are peppermint tea.
Ooh.
So lots of people I find, they're like, I get bloated.
Yeah.
I take peppermint tea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when you have peppermint tea, does your bloating go away? Not really. Do you get reflux? Yes, oh my gosh, I get reflux. Because your sphincter is completely relaxed. So peppermint tea is one of them, and then you've got spicy foods are a big culprit.
Yes.
Oily foods can relax your sphincter.
And sorry, are we saying that's a bad thing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Because, as you said,
You need to keep it.
in there.
Cool.
So once the chewed up food goes through into your stomach, you want it to stay there to get all that stirring around and break down if it wants to go back up.
Cool.
That's not a good thing.
Cool.
Another thing you can do is consistent protein intake, because that's the thing that stimulates stomach acid release, because stomach acid won't be put in your stomach if the protein's not there.
Yeah.
Our bodies are pretty smart.
Exactly.
So
pretty efficient like that. It's not going to keep producing something if it's not being used.
Yes, if there's no demand for it, why would it do it?
Correct.
Just a waste of energy. So having a source of protein with your 3 main meals is my biggest recommendation for that. So if you consume animal protein, that's like a palm-sized serving.
Yep.
If you consume plant-based protein, that would be like a quarter block of tofu or something, a cup of beans, and like protein powders, of course, with your breakfast, or even yogurts are a protein source as well. So just making sure you include a good quality source of protein dispersed throughout the day, just to keep your body in that homeostasis, that kind of like regulatory state.
Cool.
And keep the function going.
That makes sense.
I guess.
Yeah.
So then from your stomach, it goes through another sphincter into your small intestine.
There are 3 parts, and I've been trying to remember them for the last 2 minutes.
Tell me.
I don't know what they are. There are 3 names, and you'll say them, and I'll be like, oh, that's what they are.
Duodenum.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then jejunum.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I wouldn't have gotten that one.
And ileum.
Yeah, ileum. I was going to say ileum, but then I know part of your pelvis is called ileum, which probably makes sense.
Do you know what's funny? That's exactly what just came in my head. As I was saying ileum, I was like, is that the pelvis? No,
there's an ileum, an ischium, and a pubis in the pelvis. So, I mean, not necessarily wrong.
I think it's ileum.
It's the same area, so why not?
Yeah. The final section of your...
Yeah,
I just
which
did
is
a
right
quick
down
Google
in...
search. Anyone that's listening, I was like, oh my gosh.
It's right down in your pelvis, so that would be fine.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to Google the parts of the pelvis? We're right in those, aren't they? Ileum, ischium, pubis.
Yeah. Whoa, what? No, it's not.
Oh, iliac. No, because it's your iliac crest. So it must be,
crest.
Is it ilia? Sorry, guys. Just let us...
Oh, they're spelled different. One's ILIUM, one's ILEUM. The more you know. Yeah. Fun facts with Shelby and Abbey.
I had to get that straight. There's no way I can't know what the pelvis is.
I was second guessing my whole anatomy knowledge then. I was like, is that your pelvis? Do you digest in your pelvis? Back on topic. So, yeah, you've got... It goes from your stomach to the first part of your small intestine. Mm-hmm. And kind of at the join of that area around, it's called your pyloric sphincter, this one.
Yes.
So you've got your esophageal sphincter towards the top and your pyloric sphincter between your stomach and your small intestine.
Yep.
Just above there is just around there is your pancreas.
Yep. And
your pancreas or the pancreatic enzymes are probably one of the most important aspects of digestion because you have an amylase, a carbohydrate breaking down enzyme, you have a protease, and you have a lipase. Yeah. So this is where it all starts to go ahead because you're getting closer and closer to the area of your small intestine where it needs to be absorbed. Yeah. So you also have your liver and your gallbladder.
Bile.
Yes. So bile is released, it's produced in your liver, stored in your gallbladder, and that's released as well at that area, and that helps to emulsify your fats. So towards the end of your stomach and towards the start of your small intestine is where fat digestion starts to occur. Yeah. So in terms of optimizing digestion there, some people actually have a bit of, they have insufficient pancreatic enzymes. And as a clinical nutritionist, I can actually prescribe supplements which are your enzymes, amylase, protease, and lipase. Cool. But as kind of a food-related intervention, there are certain fruits mainly that contain digestive enzymes. Nice. So if you're feeling... It's hard to know exactly if you have that insufficiency, but... You kind of, if you're feeling a bit sluggish when you digest, you're getting bloated, you know that feeling where you just feel like things aren't passing through? I get that a lot when I'm sick. Okay. Like when I know I'm coming down with a cold, I'm like, I feel like my food is just sitting in my intestines and it just doesn't go through. Okay. And that's actually correct because when you are unwell and your immune system is struggling, you actually reduce your production of digestive enzymes.
That makes sense.
So-
Stop the things that can kind of be stopped to
Exactly.
spend energy elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got pineapple that contains
Oh, I love
bromelain.
pineapple.
Yeah. So that's a protease that helps
Cool.
break down proteins.
Yeah.
Then you've
so you
got-
should have it on your pizza so that you have it with your protein sauce.
No, it's true. It will help your digestion. And some people even marinate meats in pineapple juice or kiwi juice.
Ah.
And then you've also got papaya, which has papain, and it has other enzymes which break down, digestive enzymes. They're your main ones, but there's also fermented foods. So they contain digestive enzymes which help break down your food.
Yeah.
So that's a way to optimize your digestion in the kind of small intestine, stomach area. And then something you can do to not put too much pressure on that area is moderate your fat intake. So if you're consuming too much fat and then your needs of bile are not met by your bile production, you're going to have that build up, you're going to have that sluggish digestion, you're going to have fat particles that aren't being taken up. Where do they go? Could be deposited in the liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I know someone who had to have their gallbladder removed.
Yes.
And so now has to be really careful about the fat intake in their meals so that they can keep up with the digestion.
Yeah. So from your kind of small intestine, the upper portion, then you move into the middle portion and you go towards the crux of absorption.
Still happening here.
Where you need all those particles broken down into their smaller portions to do their function.
So up until now, has it just been like, you get smaller here, you get smaller here, you get smaller here? Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of slowly chipping away at the bigger molecules to make them smaller.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned, there's a variety of processes, mechanical and chemical.
Yeah.
For the small intestine, because the digestion has taken place, in terms of absorption, my biggest advice to optimize your absorption processes is to modulate the stress response.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think we've discussed it a few times. Dysregulated stress response can kind of impact the neural signaling of your intestinal muscles, because remember, they're still churning, they're still pumping. It's called peristalsis.
Yeah.
Imagine,
I love that word.
What do you compare it? I always think about if someone was making like a sausage, you know, when you have the sausage skin
and it goes
and
through.
then you push the meat through one at a time to get to disperse it. That's what I think about with peristalsis.
Nice.
So if you have like an extensive like fight or flight response, then you can end up having dysregulated peristalsis. So imagine like the sausage meat either being like there's a big gap between the top and the bottom, it's all pushed down at the bottom, or it's all staying at the top. It's not regular.
Yeah.
And you want a consistent flow through your gut tract, I guess, so then nothing's held back and everything can pass through evenly and be absorbed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, modulating your stress response.
Because we've definitely talked about that. It's kind of like digestion, reproduction. They're the two first things I would say that get pushed off the list if we're in stressed state.
If you're in fight or
Because
flight.
they're just not completely necessary. Which is funny because digestion, you'd think you'd want to... But I'm just tripping over myself. I keep going to say something and then like rethinking it.
That's not right.
Because fight or flight, we're thinking short term. So it's okay to stop digestion to deal with the bear riding at you.
Yes. Yeah.
But we have created more of a chronic situation, and in that
Yes.
case, it's not good to slow down digestion for that long.
Exactly.
I answered my own question.
And that's
Great.
where the...
I was going to say, that
Good
makes
job.
no sense. But it does.
It does. It does. So things that I would encourage as a practitioner would be kind of back to where we began, actually, like decreasing distraction around food. So if you really want to focus on optimizing your absorption, then make sure you're eating in a quiet place. You're not scrolling through your phone. Maybe even do a minute of deep breathing before you have your meal to kind of get yourself into a parasympathetic state, the kind of rest and digest before you eat your food.
Cool. I distract myself so much when I eat.
So that's something I do.
It was a coping mechanism from way back, and I still use it.
Yeah, and you don't really think about what you're doing, and then that goes back to not chewing properly, and then you're not chewing properly, and you're also stressed when you eat, so you're already putting yourself 2 steps back. So that's why we get issues.
And just like that, like if you're, say, watching TV or scrolling through your phone, just all that extra input that your brain is trying to deal with.
Yeah.
Overload system.
And it really does. That's something that makes a big difference for me. Just when I eat, focus on eating.
Yeah.
Give your body the time and the energy to take in what you are eating. Because you can feed yourself with so much good stuff. But if you're not absorbing it, what's the point?
Exactly.
It's like taking a supplement and peeing it out. It's not going to do anything.
That runs into like hunger cues and things as well.
Completely.
Yeah.
Knowing when you're full, because you can overfeed your body.
Yeah.
And if you overfeed your body, then there's too much going through your gut tract, and then it doesn't really know what to prioritize. And once again, you're not getting everything you want out of your food. So sometimes it's better to eat less, eat slower. Yeah. So you push up the, I guess, percentage of absorption.
What is being actually used.
And some people, I know when I'm stressed, I see a lot of undigested food in my number 2s.
Yeah, interesting.
So being a nutritionist, we look at our poops. It's a thing.
I have a general vibe of what's going on, but no.
And I ask people about what their poops look like too, and
absolutely.
they're like, "What do you mean I don't look?" And I'm
Women's
like,
health
should.
Physio unit that I did, you get all the way into that stuff.
Yeah,
it's great.
Because that's a good segue actually. Because once it goes past your absorption in your small intestine, not much more absorption happens. No. Now we're kind of onto the elimination process.
Yeah,
and what you eliminate, i.e. your poops, can tell you a lot about how your digestion and absorption processes are going.
Yeah, because what's left over is what hasn't been used.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And even if you have things like constipation, or diarrhea, that can show the health or the function of your digestive system, of course.
That makes sense.
Kind of particularly your large intestine, because that's primary function is to reabsorb some water.
Yeah.
To form your feces.
Yeah.
So maybe if you are stressed, everything's pumping through it at a regular rate, your body doesn't have time to reabsorb the water it needs, and you get your diarrhea. Or if things are going too slow for some reason, if you're hypofunctioning, usually in the case of a blunted cortisol response, if it's been going so high for so long it kind of loses its ability. Yeah. Then maybe too much water is reabsorbed because it's going too slow. Yeah, okay. And then you get constipated. Yeah. So I really encourage you to look at your number 2s.
If you aren't getting enough water in. If you're dehydrated.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, on the note of water's great. Of course we need it. But something to optimize your absorption and digestion is to not drink too much around your meals. Okay. So I saw a post literally the other day on Instagram that was like, how to feel fuller when you eat. Take sips during your meals. And I'm like, no.
Or have a full glass before your meal.
No. Yeah. Because that can dilute your digestive enzymes.
Oh. So just water? Or
any liquid.
Yeah.
Any fluids, I guess. Yeah. But when you have soup, that's part of the nutrient content because that's different.
I'm thinking juice, wine, whatever we will have. Yeah.
So limit your liquid intake around your meals. So I'd say probably 15 minutes prior. Don't go sculling any water. Little sips are okay, but don't drink during your meals. Yeah. Yeah, I never drink during my meals. Because, it dilutes the enzyme activity and it can change.
Abby's mind is don't dilute my enzymes.
That's what I think.
That's not drink.
Oh my gosh, no, they're not going to function. My pH is changing.
With the driest cut of meat or something. So no,
must not eat. Yes, got to get that pepsinogen converting to the pepsin. Otherwise we've got some problems. But so try to regulate your water intake around your meals.
Great.
I think that's pretty good in terms of digestion and absorption. Yeah. I could go into fermentation in your large intestine. Do I want to do that?
Is that enough for a whole other thing? I know we've touched on gut health before.
Yeah, because that's kind of the topic of all your gut bacteria, which then can communicate with your brain, and gut bacteria actually forms your stools to help with elimination. I think that might be enough for today.
Yeah.
Because we have talked about the large intestine and your microbiota.
Yeah.
So go back into what even is gut health.
Yes.
And that will cover a lot of that. That was episode 2.
You're so good at remembering things like that.
When I'm interested in stuff, it just kind of sticks in. That was a good episode.
Yeah.
Highly encouraged going back to that.
That was a good one. Heavy, but it was good.
Well, I hope you guys have learnt something from that. It's something that is overlooked. You know, even me, I just focus on eating good food sometimes. And I'm like, but Abbey, are you actually extracting the most out of your food?
Yeah.
And that's probably the most important thing.
Exactly.
So.
And the only way we'd know that really is to get someone more qualified to look at what's going on, match our symptoms up with whatever else you would look at.
If you want specific guidance, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's just being more in touch with your body. Like, excess bloating after meals is not normal. Like, reflux is actually not a natural process. Having irregular bowel motions is not good. They all reflect your function of your digestive system. Inflammation, feeling groggy, sluggish, they all show that you're probably not getting the nutrients you need to out of your food. So definitely even re-listen to this, take some notes, chew properly, consistent protein intake, pancreatic enzymes and enzymes from food. What else did we say? Manage your stress.
Yes.
All of those things. If you change those 5 things, you'll fivefold. I'm gonna call it. Increase your absorption. No, that's probably a bit much. But
improve greatly.
Yeah.
Nice.
For sure.
Cool. Sounds really good.
Absorb your nutrients, guys.
Thanks for running us through that, Abbey.
You're welcome.